The stars looked calm that night, but deep inside the quiet stretch of the Andari belt, something dark was hunting. The Predator ship glided through space like a shadow, its engines silent, its crew focused on one single target, a small human escape pod drifting alone between asteroids. Inside that pod was a child, barely 10 years old, sleeping under the soft glow of a flickering light. The alien captain watched the radar and hissed. One child. Easy prey! They didn't know what followed her. The honey badger wasn't supposed to be there. It had crawled into the escape pod during the evacuation on Earth's last outpost, when chaos filled the sky with fire. The child, Ilara, had named it Moss. To her, it wasn't a monster. It was her guardian. To every other species in the galaxy, it was something they never wanted to meet. When the Predator ship latched onto the pod, Ilara woke up. The air was cold, the lights dim. She whispered softly, "Moss, wake up." The small creature stirred, its fur rising like steel spikes. Its eyes opened, two glowing red orbs in the dark. Moments later, the pod was pulled inside the Predator ship's hangar. Metal doors sealed behind them. Soldiers armed with plasma rifles surrounded the pod, laughing. They had captured a human. They thought it was a prize. They thought wrong. As the door of the pod opened, the girl stepped out slowly. Her tiny boots touched the metal floor. She looked lost, small and harmless. The aliens barked in their own language, mocking her. But then a low growl rolled across the floor, deep, steady, and full of promise. Moss stepped out, fur bristling, claws clicking against the deck. One of the soldiers took a step forward. "Remove the creature," the captain ordered. The alien lifted his weapon, but before he could fire, something blurred through the air. The sound was like tearing metal. The alien fell, his weapon still smoking. No one saw the badger move. It was too fast, too quiet, too angry. The crew panicked. In seconds, red warning lights flashed across the ship. Something was ripping through them like lightning. Ilara stood in the center of the chaos, her eyes wide but calm. The Predator captain screamed for lockdown, but every door that closed was torn open again. Every weapon fired once before being crushed or melted. When the smoke cleared, the hangar was silent. The floor was scorched, the walls clawed. Dozens of soldiers lay unconscious. In the middle stood Moss, breathing hard, its fur shining with streaks of firelight. Ilara walked up to it and gently placed her small hand on its head. "It's okay," she whispered. "They won't hurt me now." But the Predator captain wasn't done. From the control deck, he watched the footage and clenched his claws. He sent out a signal across the galaxy. A message to every warlord, hunter, and mercenary species. A human child has unleashed a beast beyond control. That signal started something far bigger than the captain imagined. Within days, fleets began to move. Leaders began to whisper. And in the quiet corners of the galaxy, stories began to spread about a child and her unstoppable protector. Some called it a weapon, others called it a curse. The humans, scattered and struggling, called it hope. As the stars glowed faintly in the distance, Ilara and Moss sat in the escape pod once more, drifting through the wreckage of the Predator ship. The child stared at the stars and said softly, "They'll come for us again." The honey badger didn't answer. It simply looked at her, eyes burning brighter than the stars themselves. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but the war had just begun. The wreckage of the Predator ship drifted quietly through space, its pieces glowing faintly from heat and destruction. In the middle of it all, Ilara's small escape pod floated steady, guided by the faint hum of its old engines. Inside, the little girl sat near the window, her knees tucked to her chest. Moss, the honey badger, lay beside her, calm for now but alert. The child's reflection shimmered against the stars, and for the first time since the attack, silence felt heavier than fear. Far away in the command core of the Galactic Predator Union, alarms blared. The message from the destroyed ship had spread through the channels like wildfire. Commanders shouted, data screens flickered, and one phrase kept echoing. "Human child, unknown beast, ship destroyed." The aliens didn't believe it at first. How could a single creature wipe out an armed warship? But the recordings told the story clearly. The child didn't fight. The beast did. And it fought like nothing in the galaxy. Orders were given. Bounties were placed. The hunt for the human child began. On a nearby outpost, a group of bounty hunters gathered around the transmission. Their leader, a massive scaled alien named Dravik, smiled with sharp teeth. "A single child and a ground creature?" "Easy credits," he said, slamming a claw on the table. "Prepare the ships. We bring the girl alive. The creature, dead." Meanwhile, Ilara's pod drifted toward a small moon covered in silver forests. She didn't know the name of the place, only that the computer called it E79. It was unclaimed and quiet, a perfect place to hide. When the pod landed softly among the glowing trees, the air shimmered with faint light. She stepped out, her boots sinking into soft moss. Real moss, not her badger's fur. Moss followed her, sniffing the air, its black and white coat catching the strange blue light of the forest. Every sound made its ears twitch. Every movement drew its eyes. It knew danger was close, closer than the child could imagine. Ilara found a small cave nearby and started gathering strange crystal-like plants to make a small fire. She didn't cry anymore. She just moved slowly, carefully, like she had grown older in a single night. Moss sat at the cave's entrance, watching the stars. Above them, the first hunter ship entered orbit. Dravik stood at the window of his gunship, eyes narrowed. His sensors had caught the faint heat of an escape pod. "There!" he hissed. "The little prey hides." His soldiers prepared their weapons, armor plates clinking in the silence. "We go down quiet. Don't wake the beast until I say." They landed far from the cave, spreading through the forest. The trees glowed, the ground pulsed softly beneath their feet. Every step echoed faintly, like the planet itself was warning them. Dravik didn't listen. He raised his scanner and smiled as the red dot appeared on the display. Human life detected. Back in the cave, Moss raised its head. Its red eyes reflected the firelight. A deep growl rumbled in its chest. Ilara froze. "What is it?" she whispered. Moss moved toward the entrance slowly, sniffing the air. The forest went silent. Even the glowing insects vanished into the leaves. Then, through the shadows, came the sound of metal on stone. The first hunter appeared, helmet shining, rifle raised. He didn't even see the creature move. One blink and he was gone. The forest lit up with gunfire. Ilara pressed against the cave wall, her heart pounding. Outside, she heard the sounds, crashing, roaring, breaking. Something huge screamed. Then silence. When Moss returned, its fur was singed, claws dripping faintly with molten metal. It stood at the entrance again, watching the burning trees. Ilara reached out and touched its side. "They found us," she said softly. Moss looked down at her. For a moment, its red eyes dimmed. It made a low sound, almost gentle, almost like comfort. But both of them knew the truth. The galaxy wasn't hunting anymore. It was at war with them. The silver forest was gone. Burned trees stood like black bones against a pale blue sky. Smoke curled upward, fading into the stars. In the middle of the ash field, Ilara sat beside the wreck of a hunter craft, her knees pulled close, her small hands trembling as she held a cracked comm unit. Moss paced slowly around her, tail low, claws dragging through the dirt. The fires had stopped, but the echoes of battle still lingered in the air. She pressed a button on the comm unit. Static hissed, then a voice, broken and weak. It was the Predator captain from the first ship, recorded before he died. "Warning. Human child, unknown creature, unstoppable. Do not engage. Law must change." The message ended there. The rest was noise. Ilara stared at it, confused and tired. "Law must change?" she whispered. She didn't know what it meant. Moss looked at her, then turned its gaze to the sky. The child didn't understand galactic politics or the way alien species worked. But she understood one thing. If the badger hadn't been there, she would be dead. And now, they would both be hunted forever. Far above the ruined moon, in the orbiting War Council station of the Galactic Union, chaos unfolded. Dozens of alien leaders argued across holographic screens. The footage of the honey badger, its impossible strength, its defiance, its violence, had been replayed in every corner of the known systems. "It's unnatural," one shouted. "A biological weapon," another roared. "It's human," a quiet voice said, silencing the room. "And that makes it dangerous." The council voted to declare the creature a galactic threat. Any planet that aided the child or her protector would face destruction. Bounties doubled. Patrol fleets dispatched. The law had changed. Humans were now forbidden to keep Earth's predators. On the moon, Alara and Moss didn't know yet. They were busy trying to survive. She gathered pieces from the fallen hunter ship, a small generator, a bag of rations, and a cracked data tablet. Moss kept watch, sniffing the wind every few seconds. It hadn't slept in a day. By nightfall, Alara managed to power the tablet. A map appeared, a star chart showing the nearest human colony or what was left of it. "Maybe they can help us," she said. Moss tilted its head, then gave a low rumble that could have meant anything. Before dawn, they began their journey. They moved through a landscape filled with ruins and smoke. Strange animals hid in the shadows, their glowing eyes following silently. Every step seemed to whisper danger, but Moss stayed close, every muscle tense. Alara walked quietly, holding the tablet like it was a fragile treasure. By midday, the air shimmered. A faint humming sound filled the valley. Moss stopped. The badger's fur stood on end. From the clouds, a ship appeared, sleek, black, and marked with the sigil of the Galactic Union. It wasn't a bounty hunter this time. It was worse. Soldiers in silver armor descended, scanning the ground. Thermal traces confirmed. "Human signature detected," one said. Moss growled softly, low and dangerous. Alara's heartbeat quickened. "We can't fight them all," she whispered. But Moss didn't move to fight. Instead, it walked toward a large piece of metal sticking from the ground, a fallen satellite dish, and clawed into it, pulling wires free. Sparks flew. It wasn't attacking. It was building something. Alara realized it a moment later. The badger wasn't just strong, it was smart. It connected the wires to the generator, making a trap out of the broken tech. When the soldiers approached the cave entrance, Moss struck the metal with its claw. The explosion was silent for half a second, then light consumed the valley. The ship above lost power and fell from the sky, breaking into pieces. Smoke rose again into the morning light. Alara coughed, covering her mouth. "We can't stay here," she said. Moss gave a short grunt, already walking toward the mountains. Behind them, a fragment of the fallen ship blinked weakly, an emergency beacon. "It sent out one clear signal before dying. They're alive." That signal traveled far, and in the darkest corner of the galaxy, something ancient heard it and began to move. 3 days after the explosion, silence ruled the mountains. The twin suns of the silver moon glowed weakly above the cliffs, casting pale light over endless ridges of stone and mist. Alara and Moss had climbed far from the forests, up into the cold. The air was thin. The ground was sharp. Each breath turned to fog in front of her face. But the child didn't complain. She had learned to move quietly, to listen more than speak, to trust the sound of her guardian's breathing. Moss led the way, claws scraping against the rocks, every step measured and patient. It was no longer just an animal following instinct. It was something else, something learning. That night, as the temperature dropped, Alara sat near a tiny fire inside a cave. She ate one ration bar in small bites, saving the rest. Moss sat at the mouth of the cave, staring at the distant horizon where blue lights flickered. "They won't stop, will they?" she asked softly. The badger didn't answer, but its gaze told her the truth. Far above the moon, the Galactic Union had dispatched something new. Not soldiers, not bounty hunters. Something built for extermination. They called it the Warden, a half-machine, half-alien enforcer. It didn't chase for money or glory. It followed orders. It didn't sleep. It didn't doubt. And it had been given one command: find the human child and eliminate her protector. As it descended through the atmosphere, the clouds split like wounded metal. The Warden's sensors picked up heat trails, movement signatures, the faint residue of human tech. It followed them like blood on snow. Alara was dreaming when the first sound reached them. A low vibration, not footsteps, not engines, just pressure in the air. Moss's head snapped up instantly. It nudged the girl awake. She blinked, groggy. "What is it?" Then the light hit the cave. A silver beam sliced through the mountain, cutting stone like butter. The fire vanished, crushed under falling debris. Moss grabbed the girl by the arm and dragged her out as the entire wall exploded behind them. Outside, the Warden stood, tall, gleaming, eyes burning with blue light. Its voice was flat and cold. "Surrender the human!" The creature will be neutralized. Alara froze. Moss did not. The badger launched forward like a storm, a blur of fur and fury. The warden moved faster, matching it blow for blow. Metal claws met living rage, sparks flying in the air. Each strike shook the ground. Each second felt endless. Alara stumbled back, watching as her protector fought the unbreakable. The warden caught Moss by the neck, lifted it high, and slammed it into the rock. The sound echoed through the valley. The child screamed. "Moss!" The warden turned its gaze toward her. "The human will be contained." It raised its arm. A weapon folded out, a glowing plasma edge humming with deadly light. Before it could strike, the ground beneath them shifted. The mountain roared. The heat from the earlier blast had melted something deep below. The cliff cracked and fell away. Both creature and machine plunged into the ravine below. Alara scrambled to the edge, dust choking her lungs. She couldn't see them. Only the faint flicker of blue and red lights below the fog. Then silence. Hours passed. The wind howled. She sat at the cliff, staring down, tears tracing dirty lines on her face. The tablet map still blinked faintly beside her, coordinates to a human colony still far away. She pressed her palm to her heart, whispering, "You promised you'd protect me." Then, from deep within the canyon, something moved. A shape crawled out of the smoke, metal shredded, fur matted with dust. One glowing red eye still burned. Moss had survived. Its movements were slower, heavy with pain, but when it reached her, it still bowed its head as if to say, "I told you." Behind them, the warden's broken body twitched once. A single lens blinked red. Then it transmitted one final message to the Galactic Union. "Target alive! Creature! Evolving." Back on the capital world, when the message arrived, the council fell into silence. The chairman of the Union leaned forward and said only 3 words. "Send everything we have." The hunt was no longer about capture. It was extermination. And somewhere in the ruined moonlight, a small girl and her impossible guardian began their journey again, one step closer to the humans who still remembered what vengeance meant. The stars above the ruined moon burned pale and distant, as if they too were afraid to look closer. The ground was cracked where the warden had fallen. Its shattered body lay in the ravine, half buried in dust. The air smelled of scorched metal and ozone. Alara stared at it for a long time before turning away. She was no longer the frightened child who had fled a ship. Her face was still young, but her eyes had changed. They carried something fierce now, something quiet and unbreakable. Moss limped beside her, its fur singed, one eye flickering faintly red. Every breath came with a rumble, low and angry. The tablet she carried beeped softly. The colony was close now, just one more planet away. A human outpost that had gone silent months ago. Maybe they'd survived. Maybe they hadn't. Either way, it was their only hope. When they reached the edge of the moon's gravity, Alara scavenged what remained of a fallen fighter and reprogrammed its thrusters. She had learned more from watching her protector than she realized. When she touched the control screen, the ship hummed weakly to life. Moss sat near the doorway, staring out into the dark, its claws still stained from battle. As the ship lifted off, the stars began to move again, but somewhere far behind them, fleets were gathering, hundreds of ships, war cruisers, dreadnoughts, carriers, all under the same banner of the Galactic Union. They had stopped calling it a hunt. Now they called it Operation Cleansing. Every system with traces of human life was ordered to report. Every planet was searched. Every old story about humans was erased from data networks. To them, Alara and Moss weren't individuals anymore. They were a threat to the order of the galaxy. When their ship entered the next system, the sensors screamed immediately. A blockade. 7 Union destroyers waited near the orbit of a red planet. Alara froze at the sight. Moss growled low, the sound deep enough to rattle the hull. "They found us," she whispered. One of the ships hailed her. A voice echoed through the cabin, mechanical, proud, and cruel. "Human vessel, power down and surrender. You are harboring a biological weapon. Non-compliance will result in annihilation." Alara looked at Moss. The badger tilted its head as if waiting for her command. She swallowed hard. "They'll never let us go, will they?" The Badger blinked slowly. Then it turned, padded to the back of the ship, and began clawing at the floor panel. Ilara followed, and there, beneath the metal, she saw what it was doing. The creature tore through wiring and pulled open a hidden fuel core, exposing a swirling blue plasma chamber. It looked back at her, waiting. "No," she said quietly. "We're not dying here, but Moss wasn't trying to." It ripped out the core's containment locks, then carried the reactor to the loading bay. When Ilara reconnected it to the navigation array, she understood the plan. It wasn't a bomb. It was a weapon. A gravity burst, strong enough to bend space for a few seconds. The Badger had watched the Warden's technology, learned from it, and built something worse. When the destroyers fired, the sky lit up. Beams of energy cut through the void, each one enough to vaporize a small moon. But before they hit, Moss slammed its claw into the console. The burst went off like a silent storm. Space itself twisted. The destroyer's weapons bent backward, tearing into their own shields. 2 exploded instantly, the third split in half. The rest spun out of control, engines failing. Ilara's ship was thrown clear of the blast. She screamed as the cabin shook, but Moss stood unmoved, staring at the collapsing fleet. When the silence returned, the space around them glittered with debris. "They'll never stop," she said softly, tears in her voice. "No matter what we do." Moss turned toward her and growled, a sound not of rage but of resolve. Then, slowly, Ilara understood. The galaxy feared what they didn't understand. The only way to stop the hunt wasn't to run anymore. It was to make them listen. "We go to the council," she whispered. "We make them see." Moss blinked as if agreeing, and somewhere deep in the Union command hub, alarms screamed again. The fleets they had sent were gone. Entire battalions missing. The High Council stared at the reports in disbelief. The chairman whispered, "A child and a creature, bringing down our armada." Another voice, cold and uncertain, replied, "If we don't stop them now, they will reach us." They were right. Because as the wreckage of their ships drifted in space, a small human craft powered through the silence, heading straight for the heart of the Galactic Union. And this time, the galaxy would hear the roar of the honey badger before they saw it coming. The Galactic Union's capital world, Humanx Prime, gleamed like a jewel wrapped in iron. Its orbit was filled with warships, rings of light and armor guarding the seat of power. Inside its towering spires, alien leaders shouted over each other, their holograms flickering as reports flooded in, fleets destroyed, colonies offline, fear spreading like infection. Every broadcast carried one name whispered through static, the child and the beast. And now their ship was coming. Ilara's craft was small, barely held together by repairs and borrowed systems, but it slipped through the blockade like a shadow. Moss sat in the co-pilot's seat, its one red eye glowing, fur rippling with strange energy. Ever since the battle at the Red Planet, something inside the Badger had changed. Its claws shimmered faintly, its movements sharper, faster, almost aware in ways beyond nature. "Almost there," Ilara murmured. The child's voice had no fear left in it, just exhaustion and fire. "They'll listen this time." When the ship broke atmosphere, alarms screamed across the capital. Drones launched, towers armed, and hundreds of fighters took to the sky. To them, she was not a child anymore. She was the symbol of rebellion, the proof that humans, fragile and few, could still defy the galaxy. Moss stood beside her, silent, its gaze fixed on the rising ships. The girl pressed her hand on its back. "One last time," she said. The honey badger leapt into the storm. Blasts of plasma filled the sky. The creature tore through hulls, ripped apart drones mid-air, and crashed into the largest cruiser like a living meteor. Every camera on Humanx Prime caught the image. The child standing on a burning deck, her protector roaring at the fleets that had hunted them since the stars began. But it wasn't chaos, it was a message. Ilara activated the ship's comms and broadcasted to every channel, every world, every species that could hear. Her voice, small but unwavering, carried across the void. "You call us dangerous because we fight back. You call us monsters because we protect what's ours. But it was you who made this war. We just survived it! Her signal spread faster than any weapon. Colonies began to question the Union. Soldiers hesitated. Civilians saw the truth, not a monster, but a child who refused to die quietly. The Council, panicked, ordered the fleet to fire on their own city. But before they could, the energy readings around Moss spiked. The creature's claws glowed like molten stars. It slammed them into the ground, releasing a shockwave that shattered weapons, disabled engines, and silenced the capital's defense grid. For the first time in galactic history, the war stopped, not because of treaties or surrender, but because no one dared move. When the light faded, Alara stood among the ruins. Moss lay beside her, breathing shallowly. She knelt down, stroking its fur. "You did it," she whispered. "They can't hurt us anymore." The badger looked at her one last time, then closed its eyes. Its glow faded to silver, peaceful at last. Above, the stars burned quietly again. The council chambers were gone, but their laws would change forever. New decrees would be written. Protections for humans, peace between species, the memory of a beast that fought for love, not hate. Years later, children across the galaxy would whisper stories about the human girl and her fearless guardian. Some would say they vanished into the stars together. Others would swear they still watch from the edges of the void, waiting for the next threat to rise. And somewhere, on a quiet world untouched by war, a young girl walked through a field of silver grass, sunlight on her face. Beside her, a small creature with black and white fur sniffed the air, alive once more. The galaxy had learned, never hunt a human child. Never awaken the wrath of her honey badger.